In today's video, I'm going to be going over how to buy your first multifamily apartment building. I own 3 small multifamily apartment buildings right now, plan on purchasing some more, and together they make over $5,000 per month, which for a lot of people that might be enough for you to quit your job. And I did this in just a year or two. So if that's something you're interested in, definitely watch all the way to the end of this video because I'm just going to be going, step by step exactly how I did it. And of course, if you have any questions throughout the video, just drop them in the comments section below. So let's jump into it. Okay, so step number 1 is to find a deal. Now there's really about 3 or 4 core strategies to find a deal. Like we could list 100 different, wacky strategies, but these 3 or 4 strategies are going to be the most effective, bang for your buck. This is exactly how I found my deals and how I'm finding additional deals. So you want to use a website called PropStream, and I'll put a video link below which goes more into depth on how to use PropStream. And don't watch that video now, watch it at the end of this video. But basically you would log in, you'd set up an account, and you would search multifamily properties that have some equity in your area. And I usually recommend starting kind of, in your own backyard. It's just going to make things easier. But you would just use PropStream. You'd come up with a list of, maybe 100, 1,000, maybe even 5,000 multifamily owners in your area. And in my PropStream video, I go more into depth on how to actually sort that list so you're not just pulling up everybody. But basically, you would just contact them through direct mail, texting, phone calls, whatever way possible, and you say, look, I want to purchase your property. And a lot of them are going to say no, but if you contact 1,000 people, you'll get some responses, and you're looking for like 20 or 30 leads, and out of those 20 or 30 leads, you're going to find a deal. I can guarantee you. There's so many inefficiencies with some of these smaller multifamily owners from like the 2 units upwards to the 10 or even 20 units, where it's just mom and pop type owners, and they're not really doing a good job. They're not maximizing the rents. Their expenses are too high. So there's a lot of opportunity there. The second way to find deals is through other real estate agents, real estate brokers. So this is actually how I found one of my deals. And once you get into the larger multifamily, I haven't done anything over 5 units. I have a couple 4 units, a duplex, and then some single family properties. But brokers are going to be one of your best source of deals because a lot of times these multifamily properties are not listed the same way that a single family house might be listed. A lot of times they're going to shop around a multifamily deal off market just to people that they know can close. So what will happen is if you actually purchase a deal, and that's why the first deal is like really important just to get that first deal under your belt. The commercial brokers will actually look you up and say, oh, you purchased a multifamily property here, and they'll contact you with additional deals in that area because they know you can close. And then it's kind of like a snowball effect. You'll get different people literally just looking you up in the tax records. A little weird, but they'll contact you with deals. That's how I've purchased a couple different properties. And when you reach out to these multifamily owners, it's okay if you haven't done a deal before, but just try to have some type of approval letter and just say, look, I'm looking for, let's say you can start with a 2 unit. That's considered multifamily. You can start with a 2 unit, say I'm looking for 2 units, 3 units, 4 units, whatever it is in this area. I'm approved for this amount. If you get something, I'm very interested. Give me a call and just be responsive because a lot of these brokers get hit up all the time. And a lot of times people just aren't responsive. The broker will send you a deal and then that person won't respond and they'll forget about that person. But if you're pretty responsive, you tell them what you like, you tell them what you don't like about a different deal, they're going to, they're going to send you properties. You can just look up, the last 100 multifamily sales in your area on the MLS or a different source, and just make a list of all those agents that sold those types of deals and just reach out to them. I literally just did that. I've reached out to like 50 or 60 different multifamily owners kind of in my backyard, or multifamily agents, that had listed multifamily properties. And out of those 50 or 60, there was maybe 40 or so that didn't respond, but I had 5 or 6 people that were like, here's this deal, here's that deal. And I spent several hours just like reviewing these different deals, and I'll probably purchase 1 or 2 in the very near future here. So that's a great way just to dig up some leads. Just reach out to these commercial brokers, let them know you're approved, or if you've already closed a deal, let them know, hey, I purchased this one, I'm looking for another one, and they'll start sending you deals. The third way to find multifamily deals is Facebook groups. I know it might sound a little weird, but you should join your real estate investing local Facebook groups because I can guarantee you, like if I go into mine right now and I just type in multifamily, 4 unit, 5 unit, 2 unit, 10 unit, there's going to be different people that are selling those properties, and they're not always like the most, sophisticated with how they're selling it. So there's a lot of opportunity there for you to add value. So I'm evaluating several deals right now just from like Facebook groups. maybe I won't purchase them, maybe I will, but it's just a free source of leads, in your own area. So it's pretty much a no-brainer. And then the fourth way of finding deals is through the MLS. So you can just look on the MLS and just look at multifamily. You should also look at commercial, because sometimes they just list these types of properties incorrectly. And just look for exactly what, the 2 to 4 units, 5 units, 10 units, whatever it is you're looking for. And there's going to be a list of probably 10, 20, maybe 50 different properties, in your area. Most of them are probably going to be overpriced, but, if you evaluate 10 or 20 of those deals, I'm sure you can find some value in there. And I would also add that first deal is very important. So with that first deal, you shouldn't be trying to make like $1 million on your first deal. The first deal is really to get into the game. You don't want to obviously lose money. It should be a decent deal, but it's okay if you're not going to make $100,000 on it. You want to get into the game so that brokers know who you are. They can look you up, or you can tell them, hey, I have this deal, and it's going to just give you so much more experience so that you can, do the next deal, and on and on and on. And every single deal you do as a multifamily investor, you just get savvier and savvier. So, just look at the MLS. There's tons of properties on there, and a lot of investors are looking more at the fix and flip deals rather than the multifamily. So, there's definitely some opportunity there. There's a pretty well-known multifamily investor out there, Michael Blanc.
That just doing your first deal leads to financial freedom within a short period of time.
Maybe he's watching this video, but he talks about the law of the first deal. And once you do that first deal, he basically says you're financially free within the next, 2 or 3 years. And for me, that was completely true. Once I did my first deal, I had all these other opportunities coming my way. But the first deal is so important. So you want to get that done, and then people will actually bring you deals, and you'll get more experience. So let's say you find a deal. Now the next step is to actually evaluate that deal. And if I want to just keep it the most simple, basic level possible, what I would say is just look at the most 10 comparable sales to this one, and make sure yours is at the bottom or near the bottom from the 10 previous sales. Now we can get into like NOI and cap rates and all this stuff, but for your first small multifamily, I wouldn't even get too concerned with that. Just make sure yours is basically the lowest or one of the lowest prices that have sold recently. And something that I like to do is to look at it from a Section 8 standpoint. So a lot of these multifamily buildings I have on Section 8, because it's just guaranteed rent. I don't need to chase down anybody. The government just sends me a check. Actually, it's just direct deposit, which is even better. So look at your local county or city website, and it'll tell you exactly what you can get for for each unit, depending on the zip code, neighborhood, 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom. And a lot of times you can just kind of build a second bedroom, and it may be kind of in the gray area as if it's legally a second bedroom. But I found a lot of these Section 8 inspectors, so long as the place is in good condition, there's some type of egress, it's not going to be as strict as some other types of properties when it comes to is this an actual bedroom or not. So for me, the Section 8 allows me to see the grand potential of the deal. So I can see a building, and I can see that someone with that same square footage might have turned it into 2 bedrooms, and then I'd look on Section 8, and all of a sudden it's like, wow, you're getting like $1,000 or $2,000 more per rent every single month. So definitely check that out. And then the next thing you want to do when you're evaluating deals, not only do you want the property to be basically towards the lowest or lower end of the price range, but you want to find out what major repairs the owner has done over the last couple of years, 5, 10 years, any receipts they have. You don't need to get too into receipts, but find out if any of the tenants are delinquent or haven't been paying or need to be evicted. And look, it's fine if they need to be evicted. That happens sometimes. Or if it's even fine if there's some major issue. I'm looking at a deal right now where 2 of the tenants need to be evicted, and another deal where there's structural issues. And so what I do is I just look at my deal analyzer, and I'll have a deal analyzer. You can go to my website, the link is below, and download it. But if a tenant needs to be evicted, it's like, okay, I'll just subtract that from my offer price. So in my area, it can actually, I'm in Washington, D.C., so it can take 6 to 12 months to do an eviction. But let's say I factor in $15,000 for that, which the attorney fees is really not even going to be that much. But just to be on the safe side, okay, that's $15,000. Okay, there's 2 tenants that need to be evicted. That's $30,000 that I'm going to subtract from my price. And then this deal that I'm looking at that has a structural issue, I'm just going to say, okay, whatever the structural engineer, and I'll probably get 2 estimates just to be on the safe side. Whatever they say it's going to cost, I'll just subtract that from my price. We'll get it fixed, and we'll get the deal done. Because a lot of these properties that have these big problems and big issues, obviously the seller doesn't want that either. So they might be willing to take some type of maybe even a bigger discount just to get the problem, off their hands. What's also important is to do a walkthrough of every single unit, as well as the basement, the the exterior, everything, because you do want to get an idea, because every now and then there could be some, bigger issue that you weren't aware of. You don't necessarily need to get an inspection if you're buying the property as is, it's off market, you're paying like one of the lowest amounts, like I try to do with most of my deals. But if you can, it would obviously help to get an inspection done. That's more for properties that are listed on the MLS and maybe there's not like 4 or 5 offers on them, that type of thing. And one thing to keep in mind when you're evaluating these smaller multifamily deals is from Sam Zell's book. So he talks about different deals where he said, if there's a big upside and a small downside, you should do the deal. However, if there's a small upside and a huge potential downside, you should stay away from the deal. And I actually just had a deal like that I was looking at where I would have had to bring basically, very little money to the table. So it was a subject to multifamily property. So I could have just overtaken this guy's loan and not had to qualify through a bank or anything like that. So it sounds really great and everything. However, this was actually the deal where I would have had to evict 2 tenants and do a bunch of other stuff. And also this guy's loan was already pretty high. So I would basically be overpaying and just taking over someone's payments who basically overpaid for a deal. And I have to spend, let's say $30,000 or so to evict these people, and then, another 10 or 20,000 to fix it up. So, the upside was there. It's a developing area, but, there was just too much debt, and it just wasn't worth the risk. There wasn't a ton of cash flow, so I passed on that deal. But just keep that quote in mind. Step number 3 is just to make an offer. So, me, I always try to negotiate for the most part. I mean, sometimes if it's just an amazing deal and they're just like, this is the price, do you want it or not? I might do that, but always try to negotiate. And, something to keep in mind is just make it simple and easy for the seller or for the listing agent. If you make things simple and easy, you can oftentimes get a reduction in price. I like to have it when people do deals with me, everything is just straightforward, it's simple and easy. And people like that. People don't like big surprises and stuff like that. And especially these multifamily landlords, some of these people are so burned out. I've purchased properties from, it's like out-of-state landlord, there's half the place is vacant, needs fixing up, it's in disrepair. They just want to get rid of the property. They just want it off their hands. So, you factor in your repair costs, make a lower offer, make it easy for them, close on time, and just get the deal done. And I would also recommend getting your license if you're not licensed, because, I'm doing a deal right now where I'm going to save like 20 or 30K, from the buyer's agent commission side. So it's well worth it to get your license, even if you just do a few deals per year, even if you don't really do any deals as an agent, just to get MLS access. It makes a lot of sense to get your license. The next step is to get financing and close the deal. And I've basically done like 3 or 4 different types of financing that you could also use in your market. So we're going to just quickly cover those. The first way is FHA, house hacking strategy. So with an FHA loan, you only have to put down 3.5%, and your credit doesn't even need to be that good. I think they can have like a 600 credit score. I would need to double check that, but you can have in the 600 range, get approved for an FHA loan, only have to put down 3.5%, and you can purchase up to a 4-unit building. So you could buy a 4-unit apartment building. You do have to live in one of the units for at least a year, but then you can rent the other 3 units out. By the time that year's up, you've probably built up some equity. You've been basically living for free, so you probably have a lot of cash, and you can purchase another multifamily building. You can purchase a new car. You can do whatever you want with it. But that's a great strategy. That's one strategy I use. There's a couple more. Private money and hard money. So if you find a great off-market deal that needs work, there's a good margin in there, private money and hard money are a great way to do it. Now, the best way to find private money lenders, and those are basically just people that have a lot of cash and are similar to hard money lenders, where they give you a short-term loan to acquire the property for, let's say, 6 to 12 months, and then it's up to you to refinance it, get the value up, and then refinance it into a conventional rental type of property loan within those 6 to 12 months. All you have to do is ask local mortgage lenders, hey, do you do any private money lending? Do you know anyone in your company that does that? Because a lot of times, if they're a successful, just standard, mortgage broker, they're probably bored, they probably have a lot of money, and they probably want to invest in projects like that. And they could probably invest, maybe not the full amount, but probably pretty close. My private lenders, they pretty much invest in the full amount, so I don't have to bring basically any money to the table. And then after you do one deal with them, they'll refer you to other people. They'll want to obviously do more deals with you, but the floodgates kind of open, and you can get really creative and basically have access to all this capital.
I feel so alive!
So private money, Hard money is great as well. You can just look on Google, look in Facebook groups, just type in hard money for your area. You're going to find quite a few. If you can do private money because it's more flexible and it's cheaper, but hard money is great as well. The next type of financing is just getting a conventional rental property type of loan. And typically the bank is going to require a lot more equity in the deal. So you're going to need like 75% or 25% equity because the bank is going to lend on 75% loan to value. So you want to make sure there's a good spread in there. And that's why using PropStream to find off-market deals, oftentimes you can find those pretty good spreads. And obviously a conventional loan can take a little bit longer to close, but you can still probably get it done in about 30 days, maybe up to 60 days. And sometimes with these multifamily properties, the deals take a little bit longer. It's not like you're just buying some little condo. So a lot of times the seller's not even really expecting you to close in like 14 days or anything like that, like some of these residential type of deals. And with the conventional loan, if the property is off market, I would actually recommend reaching out to like credit unions or just local other smaller banks, because sometimes with these like 2 to 4 unit types of properties, they can be a little bit more flexible and have better terms than like a standard just bank. So this is the one time where I would recommend reaching out to a credit union. They can be notorious for being a little bit slow. So if the property is listed on the MLS, you might just want to go with like your standard local lender, but it is something to look into. And then there's subject to financing. So I actually haven't done one of these deals before, but I was just recently presented with one, so I had to get caught up to speed. But it's basically where you take over the seller's existing loan. The loan is actually still in the seller's name, but you take title to the property. So if you were to miss payments, it looks bad for the seller. So that's when a seller is just really motivated to get rid of the property. There's not a ton of equity in the deal, but if they have a really good payment and maybe it's a developing area, it could make sense as a deal. With subject to financing, you don't have to, go through the application process for a loan. There's no appraisals or anything like that. And it's kind of a gray area in the real estate industry. And I'm not an attorney, but as far as I know, it's legal. There's plenty of people that do it. There's investors that have done hundreds, if not thousands, of subject to deals. But it's a great way to just get properties, without having to get a mortgage in your own name. So that's how you buy your first multifamily deal. Be sure to watch this video right here. And overall, the most important thing is just to get your first deal done. Once you do your first deal, everything will open up. People will start contacting you. You'll become savvier. You'll be able to analyze deals faster. You'll be able to see potential where others don't. And there's less competition too in the space. In the competition, you can make the argument is a little bit more sophisticated, but trust me, there's plenty of deals out there. Once you do your first multifamily, even if it's just a 2-unit deal, you will start to see tons of opportunities out there. Thanks for watching. See you on the next video.